the importance of self-advocacy in the workplace, the benefits of building a professional brand, and becoming the CEO of your career, all on this episode of the Take Back Your Career podcast.
You need to take action, and you're about to get real-world information and insight for fixing your career. This is the Take Back Your Career podcast with your host, Adam Fullerton.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 8 of the Take Back Your Career podcast, which is dedicated to helping you find happiness, fulfillment, and financial security in the work that you do. And we do this by interviewing real experts who can provide actionable ideas, which can produce real results. And today we have on another expert who goes by the name of Tristan Layfield. He is a career coach and resume writer at Layfield Resume Consulting and is also the host of another podcast called Living Corporate. So, Tristan, I think you're going to have a ton of information and knowledge to share today. The topics we have on hand, I'm super excited for. So, without jumping the gun, I first want to just say thanks for being on today and helping our listeners. And so I just want to ask, like I always do, how's it going? How's life? And welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Adam. I really appreciate it. And, everything's going as well as it possibly can in the middle of a pandemic. Just living life and, trying to stay safe and stay healthy.
That's awesome. So, without further ado, I want to jump into this. And so I want to start this off by saying we know the problem and what our listeners face. It really is that they're feeling stuck and unhappy in their job and their career. And so the goal of this podcast and these conversations is to figure out, how do we help these people? And so I wanted to start off and say, if you see someone who's stuck in their job and in a career that they're not happy with, and they're just I don't say miserable, but they're just truly unhappy, what is something that they can do or should know about that's going to help them fix their situation?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I think the first thing you really need to do inside of your career is be your own biggest cheerleader, right? And the way that we do that is really through personal advocacy or self-advocacy, right? And so some people aren't familiar with what those concepts are, but it's essentially effectively showing others or sharing with others what you've already accomplished so that you can advance your career, right? And I bring up this concept because oftentimes many of us have been taught or socialized as we've grown up that it's not really great to talk about ourselves and our accomplishments and our successes, right? In some way, we come off as boastful or bragging. And we're often taught that we need to let the work speak for itself. But what I found inside of corporate spaces is that oftentimes the work is actually overlooked simply because many people are overworked, right? We have bosses who have tons of different direct reports and tons of different things on their plate. It's really hard for them to remember what you've done and how you've contributed. And so it's really important for you to understand the contributions you've made to whatever company or organization. And it's also important that you bring those up. You remind your boss. And there's tons of different ways to do that, whether it's one-on-ones all the way to your performance reviews. But I think that's a really critical piece of the career journey that most of us miss.
And do you think, and we mentioned this briefly on another episode, but a lot of the times people get so, like you said, they're so overloaded, I guess, for lack of a better term, with work that it's kind of like finish one task and then on to the next one. And a problem that people face is that they don't reflect on what they've accomplished. So therefore, they don't have any sort of record to show for and say, this is what I've done, and this is why I'm, maybe worth more, or why I should be looked at for a promotion, or whatever it might be. They don't think about, what have I accomplished? And therefore, they can't really speak about what they've done and hold everybody else around them accountable. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I've worked with over 600 people in this career space. And what I found in working with them is that most people have not taken enough time to reflect on their experience. Right. And when they do take the time to reflect on their experience, by the time they meet a person like me, you're 5, 7, years out from that experience. And it's really hard to remember what you've done. So I always tell people that throughout your career, you should be keeping what I like to call a career journal, with other people like to call a brag book, right? And you should be writing down the things that you've contributed to, the results you've driven, the value you provided inside of your company or organization. So you can always come back to utilize those, right? Whether that be as a bargaining chip inside of your company when it comes to your raises, whether that be in utilizing it in your resume so you can actually convey what a potential return on investment for a potential employer would be, or whether it's on LinkedIn or during your networking conversations to figure out how you may be able to provide value to someone that you actually want to connect with, right? And I think that's a very very important thing, right? And so really to be your own biggest advocate, you really need to identify your professional strengths, understand how that fits into your company or the companies you want to work for, and really successfully communicate what your unique value proposition is to either your current employer or your potential future employer. And that brag book or that career journal can be something to help you make that case.
And I think it's going to set you up for future success. I mean, this is what you're getting at. But if you don't have this record and you don't have this kind of brag book or this journal in which you keep your accomplishments, it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind. You might not even realize what you've accomplished. And if you're getting to the point, in my opinion, when you're a young professional who's looking at kind of what is the next step in my career, you really need the journal or the book that says, here's what I've done. Because I'm either going to hold the current employer that I'm at, they're going to hold their feet to the fire and say, this is what I've done. It's time to step up and, help me out and figure out what's next. Or it's time for you to take action and cut your ties. And loyalty is a two-way street, I like to say. And if the company isn't providing you that opportunity to grow and a path towards growth, then take that list of accomplishments, put it on your resume, and go somewhere else that's going to say, hey, you've done a lot, you're worth it. And we're gonna make sure that you know that.
Yeah. And that's what that career journal or brag book does. It makes sure you understand that you're worth it, right? You understand what you've contributed, that you are valuable, that you give something to these companies and organizations. And by also keeping that, one of the things that it helps you do is it also helps you understand the underlying theme in your career. Where are you always showing up? Where are you always driving results, right? That's the thing that makes you you. That's what makes you different. And that's your selling point when it comes to either your employer or your potential future employer. And oftentimes people don't readily see that because we're so caught up in the day to day. And then by the time we get to reflecting on it, we're really focused on the task we accomplish rather than the value we provide.
Man, I couldn't have said it any better. I think that all of this feeds into what you're talking about, self-advocacy, just the belief in yourself, being your own cheerleader, knowing who you are, knowing what you've accomplished, and letting that represent what you can provide to the organization you're in or another organization or whatever it might be in life. Really just comes down to understanding who you are and what your accomplishments are and being confident in them and saying, here's the value I offer. That is a great idea and a concept, again, I've never heard before.
Yeah. Yeah. And self-advocacy is even beyond just the value and the raises and the performance reviews. It's also speaking up for what you need to be successful inside of your role, right? Oftentimes we'll get into positions inside of companies and organizations and we don't have all the tools to do what we need to do.
Sure.
It's being able to speak up to communicate that. Or maybe even in this, the pandemic, that's another place where you're able to sort of flex those skills of self-advocacy. A lot of companies are trying to bring people back into office spaces. If you're not feeling comfortable with that, if you have a situation that doesn't allow you to do that, right? Self-advocacy is also speaking up for yourself and making sure you're positioning yourself in a way so you can be successful, so you can contribute, so you can provide that value, right? And I think oftentimes we've been taught so often to just go with the flow, right? We have no power, we have no authority over these things. And really, I don't think that's the case. Oftentimes we don't even speak up enough to figure out if we do. And if there is a company or organization that is taken aback by your self-advocacy, now there's a question of, is this the company or organization for me? Right? And understanding if this is a good fit for where you should be or whether you should be moving on to another company or organization that aligns with you and it will give you the tools you need to be successful in the role that they put you in.
And that's powerful. And it really, like you said, it's people get so nervous or they don't speak up enough and they say, well, I can't kind of rock the boat. And I feel like a lot of young professionals out there, they need to realize that if they want to make the progress that they're looking for, if they want to escape the misery that they're dealing with every single day and the lack of fulfillment, it's time to rock the boat. Otherwise, what do you have to lose? You're going to show up the next day and do the same thing and nothing's going to change. So I just think this concept of self-advocacy is huge and it's important and it's okay to have a belief in yourself and again, for lack of a better term, rock the boat. So in your opinion, if someone has this journal and they start updating kind of the list of accomplishments and the things that they're proud of and they've done for this organization, what do they do next? Do you go to the employer that you're at and say, here's everything I've done, it's time to sit down and let's talk about my future? Or what would you recommend people do in their current situation?
Well, I know oftentimes people have one-on-ones with their bosses on a regular basis, right? It's making sure to bring up those incremental wins that you've had inside of those one-on-ones. It keeps it top of mind for your boss. You begin to look like a top producer and you become a star employer, right? Or star employee, excuse me. Right? That's one of the areas where you can bring that up. The other areas, most of us have either biannual or annual reviews that we need to be doing. And your performance review is a great place to start documenting all of those wins that you've had, all the ways you contributed to the organization, right? Most of our companies or organizations have some type of mission, some type of values. We can tie those things directly to those missions and values. And that really paints the picture that, number one, we're very connected to what the company does. Number two, we also fully understand what the company does and how we contribute to that. And number three, that we are a valuable employee here. And that allows us to make the case to get above those, industry standard 1.9% raises that most people get every single year, right? So I think those are really two great places to bring up that information. Now, if you're in a situation where you've been overlooked for promotions and things of that sort, now it's time to have an individual conversation with your boss about that particular situation. And this is where that brag book or career journal comes in, right? Here's the case of why I believe that I should either get that promotion or why I should get that raise. And you're able to better put that case together and put it in front of your boss in a cohesive manner. Whereas, just saying, well, I completed all my work, that's not a case to get what you want, right? But if you can say, in completing all of my work, right, we grew revenue by XYZ%, right? We were able to retain employees by, 99% of our employees. We were able to do this, that, and the other. If we're able to get those hard, tangible facts, that data, then that's the thing that's going to make the case for whatever it is that you want.
And I think that segues perfectly into the second topic I want to talk with you today, which the self-advocacy, the belief in yourself and having the supporting evidence of what you've accomplished and who you are and what value you bring to an organization, that sets you up as an expert, let's just say, in your role, and it also allows you to have the confidence again in what you've offered. And so the second thing I want to talk about with you is what I want to call just professional branding, which is you knowing yourself and knowing your value. So I just want to talk about that a little bit with you, and what can that do for someone in their career as well?
Yeah, so I think the pandemic was a great example of why every single professional should have a professional brand outside of their employer. When I think of my professional brand, my employer may be a part of that, but they are not my entire brand. And the reason being is because if you decide to build a professional brand, that means you establish some type of thought leadership, some type of authority inside of the space, whatever space that you occupy. And if we establish that authority, we establish that thought leadership correctly, and we're consistently engaging with it on platforms like LinkedIn, what that can do is that can draw opportunities to you, right? Instead of you having to go out there and find the perfect job opportunity for you, now that you know what you really focus on, how you contribute here, you can actually attract them to you yourself instead of having to go search them out. And so I think that's a really, really beneficial thing, especially now we see, so many people have lost their jobs. Well, if people see you as a thought leader, they see you as somebody who can hit the ground running. We're in a situation where a lot of companies are ramping back up. They want people who have the experience, that have the ability to hit the ground running. This could be something that puts you at an advantage over other job seekers who aren't as aware of how they provide that value. And this is really essentially where that brag book and that career journal comes in. I talked about it allowing you to understand that underlying theme of your career, where you show up, where you provide that value, how you drive those results. And that's what's going to be the cornerstone of your professional brand.
I 100% agree. I think one of the biggest things that people need to start taking advantage of is I know you touched on this, but like LinkedIn and just these different networking opportunities. And we talked about this on several episodes so far. But if you can again, represent yourself in a very professional manner and someone who doesn't have all the answers, but again, understands an industry or a particular job or some sort of, I don't know, technology or something like that. And you put that out there, it's building different opportunities for the long term. Because I think one thing that people believe nowadays is that they're going to be at a company, or a company should support them through the entire journey of their career. And a lot of people realize that's just not realistic anymore, especially in the day in which we don't have pensions or anything like that. You know, what is the benefit of staying somewhere if they're not going to offer you that opportunity? So you either, again, need to have them provide you the opportunity and talk them into giving you that opportunity, or start building that professional brand elsewhere so that you can set yourself up for additional opportunities that you don't have access to just, you know, in the office that you're in.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, even beyond the additional opportunities, once you've established a personal or professional brand, it's something that you're able to leverage to even get that salary that you're looking for, right? Over my time of doing this, and when I say doing this, being a career coach and resume writer, I've gotten quite a bit of you know, thought leadership under my belt, right? I've you know, been featured in articles in Black Enterprise, Business Insider. I'm a top voice on LinkedIn, right? Now I've had universities come to me inside of my LinkedIn inbox talking about, you know, director of career services roles and things of that sort. And now I'm able to utilize that and leverage that professional brand to really, you know, advocate. Once again, back to that word, advocate for myself on what I believe I should be paid based on the experience and the expertise that I bring to that position, right? And like literally, if you start to build a professional brand, things will just start flowing for you, right? I was literally hanging with my best friend the other day who you know, is building his professional brand on LinkedIn and posting and engaging with people. And then next thing you know, there's a very large Fortune 500 company in his messages, you know, basically bringing up an offer to do diversity and inclusion work with them, right? And this wasn't something that he sought out. It's something that literally came to him through his profile being done correctly, through him actually posting on the platform and sort of establishing his own thought leadership in his own way, right? He's clearly distinguished himself enough for an organization to recognize that and actually reach out to him. And I think that's really the key here. You know, you brought up a really great point. We really, a lot of us have the same mindset of our parents and our grandparents, thinking that a company or organization is going to remain loyal to you as long as you remain loyal to them.
Sure.
And unfortunately, no, that's not the case, right? Right. Those very subpar, lackluster raises tell us that's not the case, right? The way that some companies and organizations give you very minute contributions to your 401k tells you that is not the case. So if these companies or organizations are not going to look out for your best interest, what that means is that you, as you know, the CEO of your career, need to look out for your own best interest. Your professional brand allows you to do that. And it allows you to then be known for whatever you want to be known for. Just because you're known for something today does not mean 2 years down the road, that's the exact same thing that your professional brand is built on. But that's the flexibility that it gives you and it allows you to have inside of your career.
The concept of being your own CEO, that's such a powerful statement. Again, I'm glad I'm having this conversation. Obviously, there's that alone is something that people, I think, need to be aware of and hear more often, that you're responsible for your situation. So if you are working somewhere and they're not offering what you're looking for in terms of growth, salary, whatever it might be, do something about it. You're in charge of your situation, not the company. Mm-hmm. The company is simply offering you a position or a raise or a salary or whatever it might be, but you're the one that's either going to accept it or not accept it. So just the idea of being a CEO of yourself is so powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to shout out Nicole Webb. She's a career coach and resume writer. She's actually the first person I heard say that.
Yeah.
And so I actually have a mug with that on it, CEO of my career.
Well, you just dropped a name, so we're gonna connect and try to get her on if she's got this idea as well. I'd love to hear more of it. So, but anyway, I didn't mean to cut you off, but we might have to try to find her and get her on.
Look, I can connect you to. I love her philosophy of being the CEO of your own career, and like really, let's just be real. I'm a person that's loves to base what I talk about in research, and the research shows that millennials specifically, and subsequently, I'm assuming Gen Z, we sort of got the short end of the stick, millennials did, when we came into the workforce. What we can see now with Gen Z and COVID, they're going to get the short end of the stick coming into the workforce. But specifically, the research on millennials shows that millennials actually fare better when they only stay at companies for about 2 to 3 years. Simply put, because you have a better earning potential, actually jumping ship and moving to another company and getting that 10 to 15% on average salary increase, whereas you're only getting about a 2 to 3% salary increase staying with your employer. So at the end of the day, what I really encourage people to do is root what you do inside of the research. If the research tells you that the best thing for you to do as a millennial is every 2 to 3 years looking for a new opportunity, that's probably what you need to be doing if you really want to find some type of success inside of the organization. Because one of the other things that we've been battling with is that there's much older people who've been holding leadership roles and they're simply sitting, right? We're not able to advance inside of some of our companies because these positions are just being held. And so oftentimes what you need to do is you need to get outside of the company that you're currently in to be able to even advance your career to the level that you want it to be. So at the end of the day, that being the CEO of your career is sort of taking all this information, learning how you can advocate for yourself, building that brand so you can leverage it, and then taking all of the research and information so you can build the best strategy for you to obtain whatever goals you have inside.
Totally. And it's funny, you answered one of the questions I wanted to ask you when you were talking about this, but I was going to ask you, do you think people staying at a company stunts their growth? And one of the several answers, but one of the things you noted was that just from a leadership perspective, people like to sit in their jobs because maybe they got to a manager role finally and they're like, okay, I can kind of take it easy and like I don't need to try any harder or whatever it might be. Like, cool, they're set, they're in that position, but how do you grow then if the next position above you is filled and that person's not leaving anytime soon? So again, my question was simply going to be, does staying at a company stunt their growth? And it sounds like based on the research alone that the answer is yes.
Yeah, I would say the majority of the time it does. Now, does this apply to every company or organization? No, right?
Sure.
Does this apply to the majority? I would say yes, right? Now, if you're somebody who's working inside of a startup and you have an entry-level position with them, odds are you're going to have the opportunity for very quick advancement inside of a company or organization like that because it's a startup. You're typically wearing multiple hats. They're growing usually fairly consistently. They're having new organizational structures pop up. They're going to need leadership. Great. That works really well for a lot of people. But if you're an established Fortune 500 company that has 450,000 employees worldwide, right, odds are it's going to be really difficult to get to some of those higher leadership roles that you may want to actually attain. So what I find is that you're going to have to sort of shift and move accordingly. Sometimes you're just going to have to, I've seen people literally bounce back and forth between competitors simply because they want to advance their career.
Right.
So I think you have to really assess your current situation and understand the organizational makeup of the company or organization that you are in to be able to make that decision for you.
Sure.
But I would say the overwhelming majority of us, yes, we would. I think it's best for us to sort of transition out of jobs after about that 2 to 3 year mark. And the other thing about that is we have to be mindful of the type of jobs we're looking for. Most of us are always looking at these very big Fortune 500 companies, the Googles, the Apples, the Twitters, the Facebook. While those are all great, they actually do not make up the majority of employers inside of the United States. The majority of employers are mid to small size companies. And what that means is that you can actually get into some of those mid to small size companies and get some of those leadership roles that you're looking for, get the experience that you're looking for, get the pay that you're looking for, and maybe even then transition back into some of those major Fortune 500 companies because you've built up a track record, a history of being able to run organizations like that. So I think it's, all of this is very imperative when we're talking about what our career strategy looks like. It's understanding the landscape and understanding the market so we can make smart moves.
This goes back to the idea of loyalty in a company. And if people stop thinking that they need to be loyal to a company, but rather they need to be loyal to themselves. And then they look at the different opportunities that exist. If you just say, okay, it's my career, it's my responsibility. Does that mean I need to stay at a company? No one anywhere ever said that you have to stay at the same company and try to work your way up. It might be an option, to your point, to go to another company that's looking to hire for this position that you have some of the experience in. But it also says there might be an opportunity within that new position, a new company, for you to grow, because what you're currently doing, you might know exactly what you're doing, but where's your growth? If you go to a new company who says, I want you to do this, but there's also this. So I feel like you can put yourself into a position in which you take on just more new, projects or situations or whatever you want to call it. So you can say, cool, I'm also working on what I know, but I'm also being challenged to grow. And then you just kind of, if you want to, use that tactic and try to grow as much as possible. And then that sets you up for really the long-term plan of maybe a company you're looking for, or the career you really want, instead of sitting there and hoping and taking probably several more years to get what you're looking for.
Yeah. At the end of the day, the name of the game when it comes to careers at this point is gaining exposure and creating results. Right. There was actually a conversation that was happening on LinkedIn recently. It was like, which matters more, the amount of years that you've provided a company, or the results and achievements that you've had in a short time frame inside of the company? And I always think it's about the results and achievements. If we can convey those well, what that tells a company is that they're going to get a return on investment in you as an employee. And that's what's going to literally make you stand out at the end of the day, right? So we just need to figure out what that potential return on investment is and market the hell out of it. That's simply what it is for our careers. And sometimes your current company just will not get that. And that's okay. It's okay to move on, simply put.
That's awesome. That's, again, I keep using the same word, but that's powerful. So, wow, we just burned through, I think, everything that we wanted to talk about. Holy smokes. That was such an educational session for myself included. And I think that's just such great information for our listeners to be aware of. So, thank you for being on. Again, there's so much information, and before I kind of recap everything we talked to the best of my ability, I want to say thank you again for Tristan for being on. I want to say you again shared so much great information that I think people really need to take to heart. And so before kind of going into my recap and signing off, I want to ask you, if people love your ideas and they want to learn more from you or work with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, let me start before I put all my information out there.
Please.
Say thank you so much for bringing me on. I really love having these conversations. I love sort of, trying to empower people to really take control of their career. So thank you for sort of providing a platform to be able to do that. But if you want to connect with me, you can check me out on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Layfield Resume. So that's LAY, F as in Frank, IELD RESUME. Or you can connect with me, Tristan Layfield, on LinkedIn. You can also check out my website. It's www.layfieldresume.com, spelled just like I spelled it before.
Fantastic, Tristan. Thank you so much for being on again. And guys, just to recap some of the things, again, listen to this over again just to hear all of the different information that Tristan shared. But I'm going to do my best to just kind of go through the highlights really quick, because I think, again, there's so much that you shared, and it's truly powerful. So be your own cheerleader and understand who you are and what you represent and what you can accomplish or have accomplished and what your value is. You also need to understand the power of being a professional and building your own brand so that you can share your accomplishments and, again, your value to anyone at any time, whether it's within the company that you're at or in a professional network on LinkedIn or elsewhere. And those opportunities will organically happen if you're persistent in sharing that your experience that you have. Next up, I just want to say, and this is such a great, and you might have heard the ambulance in the background, so I apologize for that, but the idea of being your own CEO, again, owning your situation, owning your future, owning everything to do with your career. You're in charge, you're responsible, nobody else. And if you want to make change, make the change. It's up to you. And last but not least, create exposure and get results, because that's going to build the confidence you're looking for. That's going to help you build the professional brand and the confidence and everything else that will set you up for being in control of your situation. So again, thank you to Tristan for being on this episode. Thank you guys for listening to episode number 8. And please do check out Tristan on his site, on LinkedIn, and elsewhere. And with all that said, I will catch you guys on the next episode. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Take Back Your Career podcast with your host, Adam Fullerton, the podcast dedicated to giving you expert advice and actionable ideas so that you can achieve real results and finally take back your career. Like what you heard in today's episode? Consider leaving a 5-star review and visiting TakeBackYourCareerPodcast.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify for more episodes. And remember, Mondays shouldn't suck, and neither should finding help. Thanks for listening to Take Back Your Career podcast.